Hi, the goal of this video is to begin introducing some concepts about LabVIEW, which is a great program for data acquisition, looking at the results of data, coding in general. There's a lot of applications of this that are very useful to us as engineers, but mostly in the field of experimentation and collecting data. And we're going to start by introducing the basics of LabVIEW. And when you open LabVIEW, you see I opened up LabVIEW 2019. You might have a different version. What we want to do is create what's known as a virtual instrument or a VI. And if you come over here, you can see that there's recent files that exist. This is on my computer. But if you want to create one from scratch, you can come and click blank VI, which is going to be a blank canvas for us to work with. So when we click this, what will end up happening is that two windows will pop up. We see what's called the front panel over here, and we see what's called the block diagram over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to see these at the same time when I'm writing code. Again, you don't have to do this. You could switch back and forth between them if you wanted to, but I like to see them both at the same time so that I can follow along with what I'm doing. So you have these two separate windows, the front panel and the block diagram. The front panel is where a user can interact with the program. And as an analogy, imagine that you are playing a video game. You are the user, you're holding the controller, you're making your character move. You're having fun, you're doing what you need to do to interact with it. The block diagram on the right side is where we will create the code. So from a video gaming perspective, imagine you have a bunch of engineers at Nintendo or PlayStation that are working for years behind the scenes to create things for you to play. They may be creating something that we can't see or mess with. But once it's done, we can interact with it on our screen. From a LabVIEW perspective, the code will be created in the block diagram. We'll interact with it in the front panel. So where the code is created. Now, the troubling thing about LabVIEW in terms of difficulty is that it's very different from our standard coding languages. If you've ever coded in MATLAB or C++ or something along those lines, those are text-based type of codes where you're typing words or sentences or commands. But with LabVIEW, what we're doing is creating blocks that are wired together in a certain way. And I think the best way to show this is through an example. And we'll focus on our block diagram for a second. And let's say for our example, we want to add two numbers together and create an output. So 4 plus 3 is what we want to add together. So in LabVIEW, your best friend is going to be the right mouse button of your mouse. So we'll right click. And if you right click in the block diagram, you'll see that this whole menu of things pops up. If you right click in the front panel, you'll see that a different menu of things pops up because the things that are allowed in one place may not necessarily be allowed in the other. Let's go ahead to our block diagram and let's right click. And you'll see that there's something called structures, which is related to coding. There's arrays, clusters, booleans. But the thing we're going to do is add, which would be under numeric in this case. And I'm going to go ahead and click add, and I can drop it somewhere. What I recommend to do is put it on full screen because my LabVIEW does not allow me to zoom in, which is very annoying. I think more recent versions of LabVIEW allow you to do that. But in this one, I'm unable to zoom in. So I put this triangle here. I have no idea what to do with it. What's nice is that I can come to this question mark on the top right. It says show context help. And I can go ahead and highlight something that I want to look at, and it'll show me what is happening. So if you look, it says that this add command computes the sum of inputs. And it looks like that X is an input, Y is an input, and it produces a sum X plus Y. One important thing about LabVIEW is that LabVIEW reads from left to right. or I don't want to say reads, I'm going to say information travels from left to right. What do I mean by that? In this situation, our inputs are these two different numbers, X and Y. They will travel from the left through this wire, enter into this block, this triangular block that does addition, and the output will come out of the right side of that block, and it'll be equal to the sum. So it goes from left to right. If we wanted to learn more about this, we can click Detailed Help on any of our commands, and you'll see that it gives us a whole lot of information. It gives us examples. It kind of shows us how this command would work. So let's go ahead and see if we can add these two constants together, the 4 and the 3. Now, if I come over to the add, you see that I can hover over it, and you see these 3 orange dots pop up. Those are what we call terminals, basically where wires will connect to. And if you were to highlight a terminal with this context help up, if you look, you can see that when I'm hovering the X, it's blinking in this window over here where I am. So I'm looking at the output right now. It's blinking. It's kind of showing us where things are. So if we're to come to this terminal, let's say we wanted to create a constant that would be added. I can right click it, and you'll see that I have the ability to create a few things, and we're just going to focus on a constant for now. And if I create a constant, you'll see that it ends up being wired directly to that input that I just right clicked on. Let's make that a 4. We can double click this, and then we can change the value if we want. So now I have a 4 here. And let's say I wanted that a 3. Well, I can right click this, create a constant. I'll move this out of the way. I'll type 3. And then we run codes in LabVIEW by clicking this arrow. Also, we'll click run. And it ran, but I don't see anything. There's nothing for me to visualize. And the reason why is that the output of this is not being fed anywhere that tells LabVIEW to show it. Because in the front panel, we want to see it. Maybe the user wants to see it. So this is where our next type of thing that we can create, as opposed to a constant, comes in. What we want to do is create an indicator. An indicator will display the output of something. So if I create indicator, you'll see that I have this new block show up. And at the same time that this was created, it actually popped up in the front panel. So let me undo that, actually. Let's look at it again. If you look over here, as soon as I right click and create indicator, it will pop up on the right side as well. This is what the user will see. If you were to have a large block diagram, let's say, and you're kind of confused about your code, you can double click things in this block diagram. So I can double click this and it'll highlight where it is in the front panel. Similarly, if I were to double click on something over here, it'll show up in the block diagram where it's located. If I were to run this now, we see that 4 is entered into the addition, 3 is entered into the addition. The output is 7 is being fed into this indicator. I'll go ahead and run it, and you'll see that 7 ends up showing up. Nifty. Now, if we were to have an error somewhere, let's say I were to delete this wire, there's a few things that happen. First off, if you have an incomplete wire, you'll see that there's a little red X over it. In this case, it says the wire connects one or more data sinks but has no source. So a sink is where information is grabbed. Basically, if you were to flow water from a source, the sink will collect that water. So this would be our source to 3, and it's being fed into here, but it has no source, is what it's saying. So it's broken. If you were to come up to the arrow and try to run it, it says you can't. This arrow is broken now. If I click this, you'll see that there are some errors. You have unwired things, or the error we just saw with having a sink but no source. We can click this and delete. That one broken wire went away. If we click this, you see that that one error went away. But this also says that we have an unwired or bad terminal. And the reason why is that this 3 is not connected to the addition. I have 4 plus what? It doesn't exist. So what we want to do is take a wire from here. We can draw it ourselves if we want. I can just do whatever I want and then plug that in. And now it's working again, so I can see my output. Cool. Let's say we wanted to do something a little bit different. Let's say we wanted to take that sum, that's 7, and add a new value to it we'll call z, and produce a different output. So if I wanted to create, let's say, another indicator that's going to be the sum of something, I currently don't have an addition thing. I'll get there in a second. But if I wanted to just create one for the block diagram, I can also go ahead and create it in the front panel. If I were to right click over here, you'll see that numeric is here, and then there's a numeric indicator. If I were to place this in the block diagram, you see that it just showed up over here. Let's show that again. Right click, numeric, indicator, drop, and it just dropped over here. This would be my, let's say, sum plus z. We'll call that. So what I want to do is take this sum 7 and add it to a new value z. So let's go ahead and include another addition block. So if I were to right click, I can go to numeric and do add. If you don't know where things are, you can also search for it and type add or something else. Let's say we're to type subtract. All these different things can pop up, but we'll just do add and click that, and I can drag it over here. You can also copy and paste things. So if I were to click this and do Ctrl+C for copy and then do Ctrl+V for paste, I'm allowed to do that as well. So what I want to add is the output of this. Maybe I'll change this to equal sum. I can stretch this out a little bit. And I'm going to take that sum and add z to it. That sum is along this wire. We can peel off of that wire if we want by clicking the wire. You see this little thread showed up. That thread implies you're going to be drawing the wire. If you click that, and I can feed that in directly to here, this output, which is 7, is now being fed into this addition. Now to change things up a bit, let's go ahead, instead of creating another constant, I'm going to create something that the user can interact with, which I will call the control. So if I were to right click this, you see we did create constant already. That gave us the 3 and the 4. Create indicator was showing the output of something. Create control is what will generate some sort of input that will be fed into something else. If you compare these two, you see that the arrow is on the right here, and since code flows from left to right, the output of this must be fed to somewhere else. While over here, this expects something to come into it and display that. So if I were to come and drop that control, you see that it's popped up over here as well. Let's change that to Z just to be in tune with what we're doing. And I'll click this and then feed it to there. So let's take a look at this code. And one thing we can do too, if you want, is we can clean up the diagram with Ctrl+U, and it'll make it very small and simplified. Sometimes it does a pretty good job. Other times it might not do as well. What we have here is that we're adding 3 and 4. That output is 7 is being fed into this. We already saw that earlier. Then we're going to take that 7 and add a new value to it that the user can control to produce a new output. That will be this guy. Really what we're doing is we're going from left to right here. So this Z can be controlled by the user. Let's say I make this 10. That means that this input over here will be 10 being fed into this addition block. If we go ahead and run this, you'll see that the 10 is being added to the output of x plus y, which was 7, to give us 17. They can change these values to whatever they want. Maybe I won't go that dramatic. And you'll see that it'll end up following exactly what we coded in the block diagram. I can include decimals if I want. Doesn't matter. These are just normal variables like they would be in MATLAB, for example, just written in a way that is more of an image rather than text. Comparing controls and indicators, we see that the control has a white background that basically tells the user that I can mess with this. These are indicators. I might look like I'm messing with this, but as soon as I run this, it's going to get replaced. The thing that the user messes with is always going to be in white, while outputs or things that can be viewed are in gray. Let me make this a little bit bigger to show some other things that may be useful. Oops, let me put this so we can see it better. So if we were to delete a wire, let's say, I'll do a few wires just to kind of illustrate this. It might be annoying to click all these individually and click delete. A nice thing we can do is come to edit, and it says remove broken wires from selection. I always forget that you can do it from edit. I've just gotten used to doing Ctrl+B. So Ctrl+B, if you wanted, is to like delete broken wires. That's what the B is for. If I do Ctrl+B, you'll see that all those wires went away instead of deleting them individually. If I come to here, I can go ahead and feed this in. We said that this was going to go to sum plus Z, and then this wire was the original output. Let me do that a little bit slower. This output we want to feed into X plus Y, so I can grab from the wire here, feed in. So that's a 7. That 7's being fed into here. We're adding Z. That will be fed into there as well. And we have created our first block diagram together. I'm going to do Ctrl+U to clean it up. This is our first set of code. Hopefully from this video, you learned about the front panel and the block diagram. You learned about right-clicking and creating different types of blocks, whether they're mathematical, or if there's something like a control or an indicator or a constant. We can right-click things like these inputs here or these outputs to create different things. We can also right-click in the front panel directly in order to create those controls and those indicators as well. In future videos, we'll go ahead and look at more coding things, like while loops, for example, and explain some other intricacies of LabVIEW. So hopefully this was useful. If you have any questions, please comment or message me, and I'll be happy to answer. Okay. Thanks, guys.